Oh, it's so great to see everyone. Hi, thank you so much for being here. I'm very pleased to announce our two guests for this conversation about where the smart money is moving in clean tech. To my left is Nancy Pfund. She's the founder and managing partner of DBL Partners, a venture capital firm whose goal is to combine top-tier returns with meaningful social, economic, and environmental impact. And Dr. Emily Reichert is the Chief Executive Officer of Greentown Labs, the largest clean technology startup incubator in the US. So this is going to be a fantastic conversation. And I'm wondering, maybe we should just start by talking about investment philosophy before we go into the actual companies and the actual sectors and where the money is going. What do clean tech companies even need from venture capitalists to succeed? We've seen so many amazing speakers. We've been trying to be so supportive of these companies. So what is it that you bring to the table that's unique and important? Do you want to start, Nancy?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me and also for having us do this conversation. It's so important in times like these, so thank you. Startup companies need a lot of care and feeding.
This is very true.
They're sort of like children, and they go through good times and bad times. I mean, obviously the capital is the centerpiece at the beginning, but it's so much more than that. And in this clean energy industry, the navigating the policy framework, looking at the role of incumbents, the role of utilities, the role of the big electricity-oriented companies, that's really hard. And then the technology development layered on that. I mean, there's just a huge list of things that a good venture capitalist will figure out ways to be helpful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Emily, we had discussed earlier the fact that some very top-tier venture firms here in the Valley, the Kleiners of the world, they got a little bit tripped up when they invested in the clean tech space. And I'm wondering, maybe we could talk a little bit about why a traditional venture model is a little bit challenged in this space and not in traditional software.
Well, the model for building a clean tech company is quite a bit different than building a straight up software company. And you can think of that in a lot of different ways. But first think about what is the space that you need to be able to build a clean tech company. So if you're building software, you might be able to do that in a coffee shop. Whereas if you are building a hardware company, you're going to need somewhere to do that that's supportive, where there's expertise wrapped around you, like other engineers, where there is access to investors, where there's access to potential manufacturing partners, where there's access to customers. All of these folks need to really be around you and supporting you in order for you to grow as quickly as possible. Because growing a clean tech hardware company, one that's building a physical product, is non-trivial. And I know in our incubator at Greentown Labs, typically companies will stay with us for up to 2 years, really on average 2 years. And while they're there, they are raising seed funds, then a Series A, but they're also building and testing prototypes, and they are trying to find a partner to be able to do this testing and demonstrating in a real-world environment. And that's typically what they need to be able to sell what they're doing to an investor. They need that customer, that partner, that test data, and that's all essential to getting the product to market where it can have an impact.
I would just add, incubators like Emily has developed are essential to the ecosystem, but the company you just listened to, Susan Kennedy's company, Tesla, Solar City, I mean, they're all venture-backed companies, and we're creating the iconic 21st century energy companies. Mm-hmm. And it's very different than a software investment, but the venture model has already helped transition us to the 21st century.
Are there things about the VC model that were tweaked to accommodate some of those investments, the length of time of the fund or anything like that?
There is a role for that. We heard about the Breakthrough Initiative earlier for that super long-term view, but honestly, I think our holding period for Tesla was 5 years, which is pretty average. I mean, I think we make a little bit too much noise about how different it is when it actually isn't that different.
Got it. Well, Nancy, why don't you walk us through the Tesla investment? Because I think a lot of people here, we see Tesla today, we have no idea what it was like in the very beginning, or what was attractive about Tesla to investors when it was really just an idea.
Sure. Well, you know, the early days of any investment, but especially the Tesla investment, it's sort of a wing and a prayer. I mean, there was not a lot. There was no car. There was no real widespread knowledge about the role of batteries and transportation. So you develop an investment thesis, and we kind of have a three-pronged model, and this is where we like to invest. And it did hold in the Tesla case. The first is we follow the carbon. I mean, we are sustainability investments, and so transportation at the time in California was 40% of the carbon generated, and so we felt this can't continue, and people are going to want to unhinge their cars from fossil fuels. So that was sort of an important box. Also, anytime you look at an incumbent set, which is 100 years old, Ford, GM, Chrysler, those companies have been around for a long time. It gives you a signal that it's time to invest because you need to infuse more innovation into that sector. And then for us as impact investors driving both financial returns and social returns at top levels, the third would be when something is broken, we want to try to fix it sort of on a social level. And when the NUMMI plant, which is where the Tesla plant is now in Fremont, when that closed, when Toyota closed it, 5,000 jobs were lost. Our region was at risk of losing the tradition of auto manufacturing and the jobs that go with them and the multiplier effect attached to those jobs. So that was something that we didn't like. And so when you have an investment approach that layers in these different drivers, you can be successful.
Got it. Emily, why don't you talk a little bit about the incubator model and how you choose the companies that will be part of Greentown Labs? I know that you have lots and lots of applicants, but what does it take to be a part of what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Greentown Labs, for those who may not be familiar, is the largest clean tech incubator in the United States. We're located in Somerville, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And the way that we choose applicants, first and foremost, is based on their potential impact. And that impact is judged by whether or not they're going to make a big impact in environment or on energy. So they're solving big energy and environmental challenges generally. That's really the first filter. Now for us, that's doing clean tech. It's doing more with less. That's kind of the general way that we define what clean tech is all about. And so we have companies that are doing everything from your traditional renewable energy to energy storage to energy distribution, generation, but also companies that are in ag and waste and water, even companies that are in robotics, transportation, e-mobility. All of these are ways that together, a little bit at a time, we're going to have a big impact made on the climate challenge as well as the environmental challenges we face with all kinds of materials going into our environment and our land and our water. So in order to choose companies for Greentown Labs, what we do is first and foremost that industry screen, but then we also look closely at the potential of the company in terms of their business model. We like to see that they've already been invested in by an outside source. So they probably have some seed funding, they have won a competition like the MIT Clean Energy Prize, for example, which is in our neighborhood, or they have gone through a notable accelerator program, say like a Y Combinator or a Techstars. Now, once we see that they've got some outside validation, we take a close look at their business model as well, but then we like to also see that these companies are really making an impact in terms of how they're viewing their company. So we're not really into having companies that are trying to build an app to get your lunch slightly faster, or something of that effect. We're really into companies where in the application, these companies are saying, we are going to save the world in this way. We like to see that there's a bigger vision beyond, say, whatever the first beachhead market is. And so that's another factor. We also look for conflict checks from companies that are already in the incubator. As you can imagine, the more companies you have, the more of those conflicts you potentially have, companies that are on top of each other in terms of market, or in terms of their technology. So we look at that. Finally, we have a review by 2 investors on our board who have seen everything, done everything, and that final selection allows a company to get into Greentown Labs. And from that point, we are really looking at their progress. We want them to be hitting milestones. We want them to be growing their businesses, growing their teams, and really demonstrating that that technology is going somewhere. So there's an ongoing process there as well.
Fantastic. And before we dive into the investment theses and the hot startups that you are looking at, please know, I like to kind of keep the audience part of the conversation. If you have a question at any point in time, please feel free just to raise your hand. We'll send a mic over and feel free to ask. I don't want to make you guys all wait until the last 5 minutes. It seems kind of unfair, especially since it's such a great audience today. So, and we have a question already. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Hunter Connell from Energy Innovation, and I'm kind of curious about measuring the second bottom line. If you could talk a little bit about quantifying impact, that'd be great.
That's a great question.
Great question. We have been measuring our second bottom line impact since we started in 2004, so we have over well over a decade of data, which someday some graduate student's going to crunch for us and write a Ph.D. thesis about. We're serious. We think it's essential to measure, obviously, things like carbon avoidance, job creation. We're very interested in diversity of workforce. We're interested in where we're placing companies. We want to make sure that the benefits of the entrepreneurial economy go beyond the traditional Palo Alto, San Francisco, and into neighborhoods that really need those jobs. So we have a pretty sophisticated array of metrics, that both quantitative and qualitative. Obviously things like healthcare, profit sharing, stock options. And so we weave that together. We used to do it twice a year. We now do it once a year for our limited partners, and work with all kinds of academics to enrich that. But the Ford Foundation, which was one of our first investors many years ago, helped us put together the metrics, and while we've added to them over the years, they've been a good base, and they're essential. I mean, we discovered, for example, way ahead of what we all, everyone now counts the solar jobs. We saw in our own portfolio about 3 years ahead of that focus, wow, Solar City, Powerlight, these companies are generating a lot of jobs, and they're jobs that you don't have to know how to code to get, and they're well-paying jobs. So metrics really do matter. It opens your eyes to the broader impact you're having, and of course jobs are political capital.
Sure.
It really helped the industry fight some of the battles that it had to fight.
And Emily, at the early stage, how do you measure?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to follow on a comment that Nancy made, and that is how many clean tech jobs out there do not involve maybe getting the highest degree or having a Ph.D. from Stanford. Because you're building physical products, because you're often doing manufacturing and prototyping, especially at the early stages, there are many different people at many different levels who can actually work in this industry. And so I think that that's an exciting thing to know about for the politicians, but also just in general. It's a very inclusive type of industry in terms of skill base. In terms of metrics, so we track a lot of economic development metrics, certainly jobs. I have to say that the clean tech industry in general and the investor industry in general, I mean, despite we have Nancy sitting up here today, but tends to be fairly male-dominated, and that is what it is. There are certainly a lot of mechanical engineers that lead companies in Greentown Labs. Many of them are male. It's certainly something that we are working on as a business, trying to baseline what are our statistics as an organization, and then trying to build programming around what do female entrepreneurs really need to support them adequately. Do we need to have different types of mentors? Do we need to have people available to be on boards of advisors? And what does that portfolio look like, so that we're not just saying everyone needs the same thing, but really kind of digging down and understanding how do we address specific issues such as this one in the clean tech industry.
And
the role of women is changing. for the better in both my industry, in venture capital, and in the clean tech industry. But it does help to have investors, like Susan is one of our prized CEOs. When you have VCs that are women, you tend to invest in more women. The average is something like 2%, or is it 7% of venture-backed companies are run by women. In our latest portfolio, it's more like 60%.
Wow. Wow.
It does make a difference.
So could each of you quickly, oh yes.
Thank you.
It's fantastic. Could each of you quickly run through a company that you're really excited about right now that's in your cohort and explain why this is an investment that's important for the future?
Sure. I mean, I'm excited about Susan's company, but she already told you about that. And I'm excited about Xavier's company, Off-Grid Electric, but he'll tell you about that, the energy access opportunity in the developing world. So a very topical company, because we just announced a $110 million financing this morning, is Farmers Business Network. That round was led by T. Rowe Price, obviously a big public market participant, so really validating that space. And again, looking for carbon, I told you kind of our approach. 30% of all carbon in the world comes from agriculture. 40% of all land on this planet is used in agriculture, and we have to feed almost 10 billion people in a few decades. So critically important. Also an industry where the names that you think of in agriculture, they're not even 20th century names, I'm afraid. Yeah. They're 19th century. I mean, John Deere, if you can believe, was founded in 1837. BASF, 1865. So not that that's bad. I mean, they've been awesome companies, but we do need, we have different problems now. We have different opportunities. So we need some new names here that people grow up wanting to work at. And Farmers Business Network will be one of those. What it does is it aggregates data across millions and millions of acres and allows farmers to make better decisions than just the little piece of land that they were able to kind of know and farm themselves. And this leads to all kinds of improvements in terms of, we found out that farmers in the same county buying the same seeds were paying 30% more. One was paying 30% more than the other. It's totally opaque, non-transparent, just very old-fashioned. What Mary was saying, sort of that paternalistic. It's kind of like farmers buy what we want you to buy as opposed to what you need. So it turns out, not surprisingly, that the farmers use too much seed often. They use too many chemicals. They use too much water, too much electricity. Not because they're doing it wrong. It's just they haven't had that data to understand how to optimize. And so that will allow farmers to really thrive. And that third metric that we use, that brokenness, we have a crisis in this country between the divide between the coasts and the heartland. And I don't have to tell you all of the troubles we're having in our society. Well, working together, Silicon Valley and farmers, on farmers' terms, not on our terms, can change that.
Great. And Emily?
Yeah, well, I'm going to take this opportunity to highlight a fun one, and that is Sense Labs. You can actually go on Amazon and buy this product right now. So Sense is a company that is really revolutionizing the way that you think about energy in your home. And the way that they're doing that is they provide a very small device that you can have installed in your electric circuit box. Everyone has one, whether you are a renter or a homeowner. And it is based on voice recognition technology that they're able to decouple the signals within that electric circuit breaker box and understand just how you are using energy within your home. And so this is all coupled into an app. And I actually became a customer of this company just about a couple weeks ago. And it's been amazing to watch this device decouple all of these different electrical devices that are using power in my home. And I can tell you, I'm a pretty energy efficient person that thinks about these, and I have already learned and figured out just how many extra watts that I am using by leaving certain lights on, by using certain types of light bulbs. Those are like the simplest low-hanging fruit, but even me, a person that does this for a living, hadn't caught everything in my own home. And so what this device does is basically allows you to have a much better picture of what's going on so that you can make smart decisions as a consumer. And it also has some fun benefits, like if you're sitting there at work and monitoring the app, you can see that, the microwave went on at home. So that means your kid's home from school. There's a lot of kind of interesting monitoring home activity benefits in this technology as well. So it's a fun one, Sense Labs.
Is there another question in the audience? I thought I saw a hand. Yes.
Hey, Emily and Nancy. Brett Perlman, now at the Center for Houston's Future. Just wanted to quote some of the Brookings data, which indicates about 50% of the investment in clean tech is on one of the coasts, at Boston or in San Francisco. What do we do to broaden the base of support and get it out there in other parts of the country?
Well, that's one of the attributes of Farmers Business Network that helped us to pull the trigger. The fact that our customers are in the heartland, and that we're able to hire someone in San Carlos here that's a tech person, but we're hiring grads of University of South Dakota and bringing those worlds together. So I think what you'll see over the next 10 years, because you always see it, is once these companies grow, are successful, people will stop working for them because they'll get the entrepreneurial bug and they'll want to come up with their own idea. And so the more we can germinate, no pun intended, the heartland, and with that entrepreneurial experience, we're going to see more productivity from that segment. And we're super excited about that.
Emily?
Yeah, so I would answer that a little bit differently and highlight the work that's going on really across the country. Greentown Labs is part of a national network of 10 to 12 clean tech incubators, one of which is in Austin, the Austin Clean Tech Incubator. Others are in Chicago, Illinois, and Michigan, North Carolina. Really the center of the country as well as the coast. I think the coast, we are great at making noise. We are kind of the loudest. There may be the most money piled up on the coast. But the fact of the matter is that there's good work going on across the country in terms of promoting clean tech entrepreneurship, in terms of the developments that are coming out of the universities and then are being supported by these incubators that are in the middle of the country as well as on the coast. And I will say that I think money is a lot more fluid than it used to be. We have companies that fly to California, fly to New York, get money, and go back to Massachusetts. So I don't see why that model couldn't work for many other parts of the country.
Great. Another question in the audience? I thought I saw a hand, but maybe I did not. Okay, that's fine then. Let's go back to, let's change gears just a little bit and tell me about working with government, role of states and cities. What is right now the smartest way to engage, given the fact that, as we heard last night during our keynote dinner, that it's really, really difficult to navigate. So what is the smartest way right now to engage with government?
Well, as impact investors, we're tackling the world's biggest problems, including climate and sustainability. And usually where there's a big problem, there's a government role. So a lot of colleagues in traditional VC, they say, oh, we don't like policy. Although if you're a life science investor, obviously you deal with the FDA every day. So you have to roll up your sleeves and get involved. You're not going to win every battle, but you are going to be that investor voice. And we've found that working in concert with our companies, with the NGOs, the Sierra Clubs, the Union for Concerned Scientists, the Vote Solars, you can help to develop a constituency that matters in Sacramento, on Van Ness, where the California Public Utilities Commission is, in Nevada. And we've been involved in a lot of those debates because we're able to show the legislature, show the governor's office that we're creating jobs, we're addressing clean energy goals, and so you need to develop policies to support this, because we're not going to do it without that.
Emily, you're nodding, and also I know that you have a lot of international interest in what you're doing, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first I'll say we work hand in hand with our state government. In Massachusetts, we have something called the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, which is a sponsor of Greentown Labs and a strong supporter. In addition to supporting us, though, they have a whole series of programs that are for early stage entrepreneurs to help them get going through grants and demonstration funds, and helping them connect with partners, similar to what we do. And so we really work hand in hand there. I think the states are playing an important role in pushing things forward, and we heard from Governor Jerry Brown last night exactly that. He's a rock star. We should all be thinking about how do we just take that and run with it. I think cities, certainly Boston is moving forward, many other cities as well, really hundreds of them. Cities can play an important role not only in terms of how they change their behavior, but also they need to measure themselves and then get that data out into the world where entrepreneurs can access it and build on it. And cities can also act as demonstration sites. And I think that that's something that is currently not as easy or as obvious to access as it could be. So if you think about it, if an entrepreneur can show that they have tested something with a city, then that's a real customer. That's something that can help you earn, raise capital down the road. So that type of role for a city is very important. And finally, on the international topic, so Greentown Labs is currently receiving about 25% of its applications from outside the United States. So there is certainly a lot of activity going on in Europe, in China, in other places. The movement forward has not stopped with what's going on at the federal government level here. And so we're excited to welcome entrepreneurs from all over the world to be part of our ecosystem in Boston, our ecosystem in the United States. And frankly, we don't care where the technology comes from. We need to get that technology out into the world where it can make a difference.
This is so great. Emily, Nancy, it's been awesome to hear from you. Super informative, and it was really nice to speak with you both. And